And we're live. All
Hi,
right.
everyone.
Hey, everybody. Welcome back to Worldbuilders Weekly, where everybody here is exhausted. I'm Zay. I'm the Director of Operations here at Worldbuilders. And today we have a very exciting special guest, Gretchen, co-owner of Room of One's Own. Welcome, Gretchen.
Thanks, Zay.
As you guys know, you come and hang out with a couple of Greek geeks every week. Sometimes we have some updates from Worldbuilders Market. Other times we're running a campaign like lately. We just ended yesterday our Geeks Doing Good mid-season fundraiser, capacity fundraiser, help us keep the lights on fundraiser. And you guys did an astounding job in supporting us in whichever way that meant to you, whether it was buying the products, donating to Worldbuilders, or sharing our posts, even interacting on our Twitch page. We have an outstanding community here. We were able to raise $110,000, which is significant for us. And as you guys know, that lets us support other charities as a 100% pass through, helping them what they do best. We help raise the marginalized voices within our own community here. And of course, it helps us keep the lights on and cover administrative costs. So thank you so much, everyone. We are very tired and very thankful and grateful for everyone that we have here. Jumping right into trivia. Last week, it was oh, did somebody lose sound? Can you hear us? Hear us? Hear us?
Ooh.
It's back. Thanks, guys, in the chat. That's all right. This one is easy context. Y'all read the last week's trivia, and the answer was Svetlana wouldn't get off the toilet. So if you got that right, you were entered into our monthly trivia draw, and thanks for everyone who participates. Next week's trivia, or this week's trivia question, as you guys know, please answer in our DMs. Do not put it in the chat so that everyone has a fair chance. All right, and we're starting right off with some stuff that I don't know how to pronounce. Aerials, I'd like to think is the right way to say that. Isolations, one-handed cuts. It's not magic, but practice card flourishers can really impress. What is the name of this performance art form? That was a wildly worded trivia. So that one's also a tongue twister. No. But yeah, as you guys know, if you put it in the DMs and participate, you will, if you get it right, you'll be entered into our monthly trivia prize draw. Please participate, and hope to see y'all there. Jumping right in, we have Gretchen. I'm very excited to have you here today. I hope you are well. As we said before, Gretchen, you're co-owner of Room of One's Own. It's a local independent feminist bookstore in Madison. Room of One's Own offers a wide selection of current and classic fictions, nonfiction, graphic novels, local interest titles, gifts, toys, and greeting cards. They also have strong children and young adult, women's studies, and LGBTQ fiction and nonfiction sections, which is great. Y'all also have a online presence, www.Room of One's Own. If you guys want to help support Room of One's Own, you can go on there and make purchases or even just donate.
Thanks.
But, yeah, so you're moving locations. That's kind of one of the first things I wanted to address. How is that going?
It's a lot. I don't know if you've heard, but materials costs and contractors are very, very expensive, shockingly expensive. So this is basically the worst time to be doing build out. in the last 30 some years. So that's fun, but we're managing, and our new space is really beautiful, and it's going to be even more beautiful when we're done. So yeah, the plan, we're hoping to be opening sometime in August over there. So we're kind of really getting towards where we can actually move our stock from this location. This is the old location I'm at right now, which was downtown. And then we're going to be over in the Atwood area for those of you who are familiar with Madison.
Currently, though, people can still come in and check out your bookstore at its
They
location,
super can't. Right? Nope.
Oh, boy.
Nope. There are like no bookshelves or lights here. So we're not open to the public. We do have pickup available though. So if you place an order online, you can pick up in our vestibule. And yeah, we've been closed since March of 2020.
Oh boy, that's a lot. But
sure is.
You have an online presence, as we've stated before, and people can do pickup orders. Is there any other way that people can support you while you're kind of in the midst of this move?
Placing web orders.
Room of One's Own is a super cool bookstore. I'm curious, just before diving in about more of what it represents, I'm curious, where did the name come from for that?
So Room has been open since 1975. It opened as a little feminist bookstore, just a block up from where we are now on Johnson Street. And it's from the Virginia Woolf essay, A Room of One's Own, which, basically the premise was that that essay is all about how women need a certain amount of autonomy and independent money and space to perform work and not just be always working in the household or putting other people's needs and wishes first. So it's kind of like, hey, we're carving out a space for women's voices and women's stories. As we've kind of changed over the years, and especially since we took over, I identify as non-binary. I'm not a woman. Same with my co-owner, Wes. And so we're definitely much more intersectional. We recognize a lot of the problems that feminism has had over the years, especially towards women of color and LGBT people being included fully in the movement, as it were. So we still consider ourselves feminist, but that's not we're trying to be more radical and more inclusive than what that always means to some people.
Yeah, intersectionality is absolutely important. I've heard a lot about, if your feminism isn't intersectional, then who the hell is it for?
Yeah.
I think that's such a true statement. I think feminist for me it still can be such a great word, because in its ideal, it kind of still represents equality for all across the board. Mm-hmm. How do you guys as a bookstore then prioritize that kind of outlook when you're, I guess, ordering and interacting with publishers and stuff like that?
Sure. We try to be very kind of mission forward. We have a strong social media presence. It's run by one of a few of my staff, actually, Sydney and Mishan mostly do an incredible job. You should follow us on Twitter and Facebook and Instagram if you don't already. We have hard conversations sometimes, hey, how are we as a white-owned business actually doing the work and not just profiting off of Black voices by promoting books by Black authors? We try to redistribute our resources as much as possible within the community. My philosophy is a local dollar goes further than an international one generally, although as Worldbuilders shows, that kind of global reach can be really significant as well. So we try to balance real world concerns with, also having to participate in capitalism and pay taxes and our rent and all the kind of boring stuff, like making sure we all have health care and everything.
Yeah.
So that kind of stuff isn't as fun to discuss, but it's important. And it clearly has a huge impact on people's lives, both our staff and also our community that we try our best to support.
Do you guys get to kind of have a relationship with any of the authors that you support?
Sure. I mean, we do a lot of events. Sam our events coordinator does a great job with that. It's been different this year, obviously, with the pandemic. We've pivoted to being online streaming events only. But yeah, we work really closely with the Wisconsin Book Festival, who bring a lot of really cool authors, both online and in person in the near future, hopefully. Yeah, and like we have a strong relationship. Pat helped us buy the business, so we have a relationship with Pat Rothfuss, I guess. So that's great. Thanks, Pat. But yeah, there's a lot of local authors that we have contacts with, and we ask them to come in and sign books or do events. We try to uplift as much as possible local voices and marginalized voices when we can.
Yeah, absolutely. You guys, like, obviously you have great recommendations. You have a large selection of books. I'm wondering about the process of actually like deciding what books come in. Obviously, like, we as people can't read every book that we'd like to. What is kind of that process of how you decide what comes on in?
It sort of depends. We have a few people on staff who are buyers, and to some extent, like, I buy most of the sci-fi, and some of the kids, and also like we each have publishers reps with the big publishers, or they're called commission reps, who like represent a bunch of smaller publishers and distributors. And so we have these ongoing relationships with these people who understand our store and have worked with us and can see our sales history and see our which books we choose to highlight in like our catalogs and our newsletters and on social media. And they, give us informed advice on which books in their like upcoming list we should order. And they all have catalogs that we access through advice. So you basically sit on your computer and you go through, I think we have like 5 Random House reps, and one of them has 1,300 titles for the fall season. So It's like just a dizzying number of books to go through. And we kind of make decisions based on our sales history, based on like what the full front list order will be for like a future season. So like right now I'm doing fall orders. So it's books that are coming out September through January-ish. And we place that order now, and then they come in, when they get released. And so it's going to change a lot when we move, because we're going to have a lot less space. Right now we have a ton of space. And so we can take chances on, getting several copies of something that we think might be great, but it's hard to know. Sometimes publishers make the books available to us as like galleys or arcs, and that can help us make informed decisions, even if it's just like flipping through it. Otherwise, they have like a lot of information about each book, like who the author is, what the book's about, what kind of marketing they're planning, all kinds of things like that can help us make decisions. But there's a lot of other things that a lot of independent bookstores can use, like regional groups or the American Booksellers Association, or various types of marketing that we can use or not use. We've started to do a lot of more in-house marketing so that we can prioritize more of the voices that we are particularly interested in prioritizing. So yeah, I mean, it's all a decision. Every decision is small but matters kind of thing.
Right.
I make hundreds of choices about titles when I'm doing a frontlist catalog, but also like backlist, like bringing in which books do we keep stocking even though they're older. Is it because they're selling? Is it because we're hand selling, which means, talking them up to customers? If the book's not in, it's much less likely to sell when we're open to the public, that kind of thing. So yeah, it's all a decision. What gets phased out. Like if you look behind me, anything that has the cover visible fully is much more likely to sell than if it's spine out. If you have multiple copies of something and someone buys one, then you still have one until you can restock it, that kind of thing. So there's a lot of different little decisions that kind of a core group of us makes, and we all try to keep our priorities in mind. Like, hey, we want to be boosting Black authors, we want to be boosting marginalized authors and trans authors. We want to be cognizant of like kind of the makeup of all of our displays or our front windows or our catalogs that we produce, or our newsletters or social media. Like, make sure we're promoting voices that reflect our mission and our values as much as possible, while also recognizing that sometimes people just want to read, the latest Jodi Picoult, and that's fine. Like, I have no problem with that. And we'll stock that book for sure. But it's a balance between what's going to feed enough capitalism to keep us going and what will allow us to feed the community and the voices that we think are really important and that people will really respond to if they have a chance to meet those books and those authors.
Yeah, I mean, even, here at Worldbuilders, we kind of have those discussions and have that in mind, is sometimes you have to still exist within capitalism, and in order to survive and actively fight it, you still have to have this certain level of existence. It's kind of a weird parallel, but I think it's important to hear about this stuff, all these intricate decisions that go into an independent bookstore, because I think it helps people understand the work that goes into it and understand what makes independent bookstores different and, in my opinion, more valuable than things like Amazon. And it's hard because you kind of balance this accessibility to people versus the quality of something local.
Right. And we're also existing within like a larger ecosystem of books and people talking about books, and that ecosystem is generally more capitalist than we would prefer. Like a publisher will choose whichever books they think are going to be the most profitable, and they'll put a ton of money behind those particular books in their list. And if you happen to be an author whose book is on the list but isn't getting that huge marketing push, you're just not going to see the sales. And there are some really incredible books that kind of fly under the radar that way, where a publisher does like a nominal effort to get them out, and they do the work to like produce and publish it, but they don't give it the like fancy cover, and they don't get it on the New York Times bestseller list, which is basically all about marketing. Like, people don't know to buy a book before it's out if it isn't hugely marketed. They just don't, So there's a lot to kind of balance, because there's also a cultural conversation, right? Like, we're all talking about why it's awful that J.K. Rowling's a TERF, because so many of us read Harry Potter, and so many of us read Harry Potter because it was a social conversation that was happening, that, everybody, like, people like to poo-poo bandwagons, but also like stories have power, and the connection between people who have shared a story in some way and want to like connect over it is also important. And we try to like balance how we say, like I said, I don't mind people buying like the most popular best-selling books. I have no problem with that, because people are like intelligent human beings and can make whatever choices they want. And like, maybe there's so many reasons why someone might read something that I wouldn't choose to read for whatever reason. And those reasons are totally valid, So I'm not here to judge people for their reading or be like, oh, you should only be reading small press authors because blah, blah, blah. But also, like, you should be reading small press authors because there's some really incredible books that you're going to find have gotten a lot of, they're not as processed through the machine, right? Like,
right.
The editors, the marketing teams haven't done the same work on it to like make it palatable to a wide audience. And so maybe your specific audience that you haven't even gotten as a reader might be reflected in some of those small press books that are a little less commercially polished or harder to find, but might still be just incredibly important to you as a reader.
Yeah. I mean, I think a great example of that we've seen lately here is Arrowhorn Books, if I'm pronouncing it right.
Oh, Erewhon. Yeah, I don't know how to pronounce it either.
Yeah, small publisher, but really actively invested in authors trying to tell a very specific story from a specific point of view. Yeah,
and that's an interesting one too, because like Liz Grinsky, who's one of the people behind that, used to be a tour editor for many years. Like I knew her as a tour editor. So she's kind of got a lot of connections in the industry. And that's why she's kind of able to land these like high quality books that she probably already had relationships with a lot of these authors, like as friends and, you know, cohort people in the industry. So yeah, but I think like, yeah, wanting to do something that was a little more literary, definitely a little more strange.
So, you know, I also wonder too, as the point of view of the reader is like, you know, you want to see yourself like represented in a story, but, you know, whether you're male and white or like myself, I identify as a woman and I'm white. But, you know, I'm also like part of the LGBTQ community, but I'm also not a person of color. So it's kind of balancing for me this, like, I want to see myself in these stories, but also like, I think it's important to branch out and read other perspectives. And I'm curious, like, do you guys have a good relationship with the people that, you know, at one point come in or online come in and chat about like wanting to kind of view this other perspective in books?
Yeah, I think it's sort of like part of, again, like the broader cultural conversation. Like nobody only talks about books to me, you know, like everybody talks about, anyone who's into books talks about books with a lot of people and is sort of like often online, not always, I guess. Wild to not be online all the time. But some people do it. But yeah, there's definitely the like, are you looking for a mirror or a window, right? Like, are you looking for a story that reflects you? This is not my concept, by the way, and I learned about it in college and I don't remember where, so I apologize for not citing my sources. But the idea of finding yourself reflected can be really important, but also like the idea of learning about someone different from you. And like, honestly, I read a lot of, you know, queer books. I get my hands on as many like genderqueer, non-binary books as possible, but it's not all I read. Like, and also like, I'm never going to see a book that's really about me because honestly, I'm kind of boring. Like, I don't want to read a book that's just about me. I know me and I'm sick of me. I want to, you know, get out of myself. And that's often why I'm choosing sci-fi, honestly, is it's more exciting in some ways. But, you know, there's like certainly a balance, and each reader has a different place on that kind of teeter-totter balance of what they're needing and what they're craving. And a lot of times people don't know that. That's often what the conversation I'm having with people is. They'll be like, can you recommend a book to me? And I'm like, I mean, sure, but what do you want? Like, do you want something that you're trying to find something that will fit not only like their personal identity, but also their mood and their emotional need, or like rational need if they're trying to learn about something. Like, we don't go to books just to see ourselves, but also to learn and to go beyond ourselves. So I think that's just sort of implicit, I guess, in a lot of hand selling. And it's often why I generally will try to identify like how amenable a person might be to reading a book beyond their experience. Like, some people are like, will come in and be like, I love N.K. Jemisin and Octavia Butler, and I want like books like that. And I'm like, great, I got you. Like, you want some River Solomon, you want like, you know, whereas other times I get like a subscription box from someone that gave it to their 60-year-old white straight dad who only has read, I mean, this is honestly like a choice I make every month when I'm filling subscription boxes. Like, all they read was Dune and Foundation and Arthur C. Clarke. Nothing published more recently than that, basically. And so for that reader, I might go, okay, I think I can get you to read Murderbot, you know, or maybe Kate Elliott's new space opera. Like, I'm trying to find a book that meets them where they're at, while maybe subtly pushing them a little bit, to like get beyond their comfort zone, if that's what they need. And sometimes they do just want like, I just want to read all of whatever
I'd like
Arthur
to
C.
reread
Clarke
Token
wrote.
for the 100th time.
Yeah, exactly. Which is also fine.
Yeah.
But not my wheelhouse, I guess.
What is that conversation like? Has it changed for you, your interactions with your customers, having moved to more of this online presence with them?
Totally. I mean, it's a little harder in a lot of ways. And also it's it's like about time management, right? Like, because we had to shift from being the kind of place where someone walks up to you, says, I need a book, I like sci-fi, what can you offer me? And I go, okay, let's go to the sci-fi room. And 5 minutes later, I've given them 3 books, after a short conversation with them about what their interests and needs are. Whereas often customers don't reach out to us online because, like, it's just not the same vibe, I guess. Like, sometimes people will be like, can you recommend me some books? And then I spend like 45 minutes trying to like guess, like, okay, who might this person be? Like, have they shopped here
Yeah,
before? Can I look up their sales history, see what else they've read? Like that kind of thing. I'm making a lot more guesses. It feels a little bit more in the dark because not only do I not have that sort of like quick conversation, but I can't interpret their nonverbal cues. Um,
totally.
and they're like, I can't just like one off ask them stuff because you're responding to an email. So you have to basically be like, here's a list of books, and so you
Yeah.
don't have that back and forth. And a lot of people just make a decision on their own and just place a web order. Like, we don't have like an interaction at all, which is also great. Like, people know what they want to read. Like, if somebody knows what they want to read, that's great. I don't think that I'm like need to gatekeep for them or anything. Um, but yeah, it has been a little sad to lose that sort of conversational experience. And I'm really excited to have a store that is open that I can actually see people in. Yeah, so that's actually why we launched the subscription boxes. And we've done a few other things that are basically about curating books for people, and like gleaning that information and helping to match them with the right books. Cause that's really like the best part of what we do, really. I mean, it's nice to get free books and stuff, but it's way better to get the right book in the right person's hands.
Yeah, absolutely. If we could have Worldbuilders drop the link in the chat. It's just roomofOne'sOwn.com/subscription dash boxes. You guys can check that out for yourselves. Uh, you guys also have a super amazing fire social media presence that you guys are obviously deeply rooted in your community in Madison, but primarily I see on there you guys kind of raising minority and LGBTQ voices, kind of talking about people in need. And it kind of comes up for me this question of like, what is a bookstore in its location? Because obviously you guys aren't just people who like sell books. Like,
Mm-hmm.
you're a lot more than that. So I'm
Mm-hmm.
wondering, from your perspective, like, what is your like goal in your community?
Um, so like I said, I want to kind of meet the bare minimum capitalist needs of a bookstore. And we've been able to do that and then some. And once we kind of realized, oh, people are really supporting us and I'm not worried about us having to close due to COVID kind of thing. Like, everything that we do above that is kind of gravy that we try to figure out how to reinvest in our community, in our staff, in our readers, in our audience, but also like how to challenge our readers to think beyond themselves. Because like historically we've served a very, very white, very like middle to upper class clientele, that probably won't change when we move, and that kind of sucks. But my goal is to try and build relationships with organizations that do provide books to people who don't have access to books otherwise. We've had longstanding partnerships with like the Madison Reading Project, which buys books and then gives them to children in underserved communities in Madison and southwestern Wisconsin. They're great. And we also have partnerships with several books to prisoners organizations. If you've been following our online presence for a long time, we've becoming more and more actively abolitionist. We are like, no, we do not want cops ever. Prisons are bad, actually, that kind of thing. So part of it is me stepping back and saying, hey, my social media staff know what's up. They know where to push us. they know where to push me, because like, you know, a year ago, I probably wouldn't be like, yeah, fuck the police the same way that I am now. Or,
Yeah.
well, probably a year ago I would have been, but like, you know, longer than a year ago. But so I try to let us be uncomfortable in some ways, because that is how we're going to see any change. And why are we here if we're not trying to change the world a little bit? Even if it's just changing our community, even if it's just getting people to read books that better themselves as people. And part of that means, you know, addressing white supremacy and recognizing the ways in which we're complicit in all kinds of awful things in our society. Trying to find ways to push our audience to be better beyond themselves. That's just kind of my goal, is to uplift and push.
Yeah. Do you guys ever feel like, you know, because obviously, like a store is kind of a group of voices. It's not an I mean, it should be an individual cohesive voice. But do you guys ever feel like taking this abolitionist, which you know, historically is seen as very radical kind of stance in a feminist / humanities perspective? Do you guys ever feel like you get pushback from like customer base or things like that?
A little. We've gotten a few, but usually it's like we're secure enough in knowing that we're an activist business, we're activist people. We think we all deserve better than what we are getting in this world. And anyone who isn't ready to come along with us, hopefully they'll catch up, kind of thing. And there are certain ways in which we can try to like reach a hand out and help them, or like kind of call them in and say, hey, maybe you haven't really thought about how we've been defunding education for 20 years and just giving all that money to the police, and they only solve 2% of crimes. So like, what are they for? And that kind of thing. Like, hey, maybe you haven't really thought this question through, versus people who are just like not reachable. And honestly, okay, like there's no space that is truly a safe space for everyone. And what you're trying to do is decide, who is my space going to be safe for? And we have explicitly decided it will be safe for trans people, and it will be as safe for Black people as we can make it. And anyone who isn't ready to come along on those is welcome to take a seat and start learning a little bit. I think we haven't had too much pushback against the abolition. We have had some pushback in our like very anti-TERF stuff, because we started in the 70s in a feminist community. It means a lot of radical lesbians were kind of our like original audience. We've gotten some of them saying like, I'm so sad to see a women's bookstore be taken over by like people who are whatever it is that TERFs think we are. And like, that sucks. I'm sad for those people that they can't like learn and be better, but also this is my life. This is the lives of people I love. And it's just not up for debate whether like we're going to be supporting trans people or people of color. It's just not.
Yeah, it's always really hard to see cognitive dissonance of people who have historically suffered trying to like implore suffering on other people. But
right.
Yeah.
Well, and you can kind of get it in a way. And there's a small part of me that can sympathize with what that experience is like, but also I don't have a lot of sympathy for it, because too many people are suffering way more than you are.
Right. Yeah. So I was kind of trying to wait for the end for this, but we had talked about having a like small list of some books that you have been really enjoying and would like to recommend.
Let me message. I had one of my staff working on this. I'm not sure if she's been able to. We've been a little short staffed today. But maybe you could tweet out the link later if we don't get to it. So anyway, it's a list of books. I thought like, let's close out Pride Month with some queer books. Given that I am moving my store, I have young children, and I'm, I guess, buying a house tomorrow. I have not read all of these books, although I have at least like read some of each of them. or whatever. But they're all books with queer themes, main characters of various stripes, and are sci-fi, adult mostly, and that are either recent or upcoming titles. So you could add them to your TBR piles. I've been listening to The Jasmine Throne by Tasha Suri. It's inspired by Indian epics and history, and it's got two women, a sapphic pairing, and it's very like political intrigue, kind of overthrowing a jackass of a emperor, and helping his sister kind of get out of being poisoned by him. So it's very like, ooh, what's going on? It's a fun one. It's really well written, very like carries you right along in the plot kind of book. Firebreak, which I know has been talked about before on the stream. I think I sent Gray an arc of it. I just finally got to it recently, and it is great. It's got an aromantic and asexual protagonist, so repping the A's over there, and it is very much the feminist anarchist answer to Ready Player One. So if you like that kind of like intriguey, fast-paced, very snappy kind of corporations have taken over, and like the queer Twitch streamer underworld is rising up kind of thing.
And just for people to find this list, they can find it later on both Room of One's on Twitter, and is there a place we can drop it here?
Yeah, how's my best way to do this? I will tweet it at you at the Worldbuilders.
Perfect. So if you guys find either one of our social medias, we're gonna tweet
yeah,
it.
I'm at Gretchening. My internet is so messed up.
It can be after the stream.
You want to get me through some more books? Okay, what else do I got? I've got Unbroken by C.L. Clarke, which is another like political sapphic thrillery kind of book. It's very like military in some ways. It's set in a magical North Africa kind of, and a woman who's like was a conscript in the army gets drawn into like a political revolutionary underworld against the oppressors who she has worked for her whole life pretty much. Okay, I have linked the link on the Twitter. So that one, I have it right here actually. It features Terrain's arms, which are very good. So if you're into hot ladies with good arms, great book. What else do I have? I have a little stack here. Zen Cho's Blackwater Sister, which is about a young lesbian woman who is haunted by her grandma's ghost. And there's like a lot of dealing with familial homophobia and kind of her roots in Malaysian culture. And Zen Cho is a great author. I have enjoyed other books by her. I have not yet read this one. I just finished this one this morning. It's kind of like an off one for me. It's called Star Eater by Kirsten Hall. And it is like cannibalistic women who have to eat their mothers to have power, and who, if they fuck a dude, the dude turns into a monster. And so there's this like whole situation of like almost like a Handmaid's Tale way in which they have to be controlled by their culture, and the main character, who's a bi woman, has to break free of it. And it was like it read like a young adult novel, but it had more adult themes, if that makes sense. I guess it's more in the new adult realm. Very quick read. I enjoyed it a lot. Anyone who's late to this party should get to it. Desolation Called Peace. It's the second book in the Takes Kalan series. I'm sure it has an actual name, but I don't know it offhand. Very space opera, political intrigue. This one has a like bonus way more aliens than the previous one, which makes it even better. It has a sapphic love interest protagonist. And there's a lot of really cool stuff about like memory and personhood, and also like being a small independent country versus the giant empire that's trying to swallow you up. So it's got like that kind of like colonial angle to it too. I haven't heard much about this one, but I hear also that it has a lot of queers, and it's sort of like a space station cyberpunk rebels kind of a fun ride.
So beautiful cover on that.
Right. Very feminist, I'm told. That one I don't know a lot about. Sorrowland by River Solomon, which is one of the best books I have read this year. It is intense. Major content warnings you should look up if you need access to them, especially around birth. And it's got an intersex protagonist, a trans love interest, and it's all about this woman who escapes from this like Black separatist commune that's actually secretly been experimenting on them with fungi. So it's sort of got this like Tuskegee situation in the background. But River Solomon is an incredible author. Like their writing is top notch, beautiful, disturbing, harrowing, memorable forever. Great book, very literary too. So like if you're trying to get somebody who's usually more of a literary reader to read something, that's a good one.
Just sent a note to myself about that book.
It's so good.
Reading it.
Let me find my list. I'm going to pivot to some other books that are coming out. There's She Who Became the Sun comes out later this month, or well, I guess next month, July. It's by Shelley Parker Chan, who is awesome. It's her debut book, and it's got a genderqueer monk main character and a eunuch general who is real pissed about a lot of things. It's a very it's set in sort of a slightly fantasy Asia, and it's all about like rebel armies and rebellions and colonialism and betrayals, and it's very really a good read. I should have my list up still. Like such a noob. Okay. If you liked House in the Cerulean Sea, TJ Klune has a new kind of very sweet, cozy, gay romance fantasy novel coming out called Under the Whispering Door. It's about, I guess, a ghost who owns a tea shop and maybe the boatman for the dead falling in love. I haven't read it, but I enjoyed the vibe in House in the Cerulean Sea, so I'm sure that this is kind of more of that, which is great. Very, very comforting. Psalm for the Wild Built, which is about an agender monk who goes around and basically does tea service counseling, psychology. That's the sort of vibe, and gets kind of bored of doing that after a while, and goes and meets the robots who had previously taken them over. I've read the beginning of this book, but not the part where they meet the robots. So I don't exactly know what happens, but it's by Becky Chambers, who always writes these very comforting, wonderful, found family kind of stories. And this is going to be like that. Hold Fast Through the Fire, which is the second in the Neo G series by K.B. Wagers. I think I have that right. Anyway, it's very lots of queers, non-binary main character, sort of like Ender's Game. It's very space opera-y, team found family, spacey fun. For the horror fans, Lee Mandello has a new one coming out called Summer Sons. It's a supernatural meets Fast and the Furious, but make it gay. And it's about this young man whose best friend has apparently killed himself, but he doesn't really believe that that's what happened. They're also connected by this curse that affects people with ties to a particular land. And so a lot of it is about uncovering what's up with the curse, uncovering what happened to his friend who he'd also been in love with. And it's gay and also very haunting.
We have a question of somebody says, has Gretchen ever read The Chosen and the Beautiful by Nebo?
Yeah, that was actually in my stack right here. I haven't read it yet. It's a queer fantasy Vietnamese Great Gatsby novella that came out a couple weeks ago. I've heard it's very good. But again, I haven't had a chance to read it. See, what else do I have? Destroyer of Light by Jenn Marie Brissette, who I loved her first book, and nobody ever seems to have heard of it. It was called Elysium, and it was coming out from Aqueduct Press, which is a really small press, but it is such a good book. She has such incredibly great sense of the iterable nature of narrative and how you can kind of revisit the same story in different ways. That book is so good. Anyway, her new book is coming from Tor. It's called Destroyer of Light. And I've only read the first couple chapters so far, but I'm enjoying it so much.
What was the author's name again?
Jennifer Marie Brissette, Brissett. I think 2 S's, 2 T's. This one's going to be a little bit more of your standard Tor, like more commercial setup, but it's very like, she just has such a great sense of how to build a world in a way that's different from what you often see. Like, it's a truly alien world with truly alien people. And so you just have like a little bit of an unmoored experience of like, oh, I don't know exactly what to expect from these characters because they're in this like totally different context. And a little bit brutal, but really good. What's this on my list? If you are into trans main characters with like a lot of like good feelings and donuts and like alien refugees, you should pick up Light from Uncommon Stars, which comes out in September. It's from Rika Aoki, who's a Canadian author who had written in very small presses before. I think poetry. I think she's a poet. But this one is like a very like found family, heartwarming kind of a book. What else is in my list? A Marvelous Light. So Freya Marsky, who is one of the authors who does the Be the Servant podcast. So like the very fanish among you may know of her. Her new book is coming from Tor.com. It's Marvelous Light, and it's basically Jonathan Strange and Mr. Morale, but make it gay. So let's go. So that one I've been like meaning to pick up. What else? I think I got through most of my list real fast there. Do you?
No, that's okay. You could
have I have a few more.
Your career could just be you just describing books, I promise.
Luckily for me.
Yeah.
So yeah, those are all great books. I advise you to check them out. And if anyone has any other recommendations, drop them in the chat and I will check that out after I get off the Zoom because I'm not in the chat right now.
We're creeping towards the end. I'm curious for you, what is something that really captures your attention? Like, what would you say is like the fundamental things for like a really good read for you?
My answer to that changes every day, I think. It sort of depends on what I'm needing. If I'm reading just for myself, if I want to kind of turn my brain off and be swept along by a story, if I want something that's more challenging, that makes me feel like I've grown as a person or like come out differently after I've read it. Those are two very different reading experiences and require very different books for me. I also have small children, so sometimes I'm like, what book will I like read to my kids? Generally, like for me, if it's got queers in it, I'm more likely to be there. I like a story that is going to be unexpected. I like aliens that are really alien, which is surprisingly hard to find. Like most books basically posit that you're a human, even if it's like a human who lives on a different planet or has, augmentations or whatever. Sometimes you can get some good AI or robots. I'm always there for that. But like a truly strange alien world, I am really ready to come to. I like books that are surprising. I am very hard to impress with an ending. I tend to much prefer like the first 3/4 of a book, which is often why I don't finish a book. I'll be like, I think I know where this is going and I'm not going to like it no matter what it is, just because the way like our narrative culture requires us to wrap up a story, I don't find very fulfilling. So I'm always looking for books that do something interesting with a narrative.
I relate to that so fucking hard. I have such a hard time finishing books, especially if I'm down to like the last 3 chapters and I'm like, there's just no way this is going to be what
it's
I
like
want.
now they have to fit, wrap it up or whatever, or I have to know like either they're going to win or they're going to lose, or I know it'll happen. And I don't know, I just have like a weird resistance to that, to commercial endings, I guess.
I'm sure there are people that would want to fight me for this, but I will sometimes go to a book and read the last like 4 paragraphs before I finish, like start reading the beginning. Because I just need to know.
I've done that occasionally, but I just don't even care. Like I just want to meet the characters. I want to find out what the situations are. I want to find like what the world is, and like kind of seeing them progress to the end of whatever the setup is less interesting to me. So I don't even, I do sometimes finish a book and then I'm like, oh, that was nice, but I really like the beginning, or I really like the way this, experience made me feel. That's usually what I'm looking for, is like, have I had a memorable experience of whatever type while I was reading the book?
We probably have done a lightning round with you before, but I would love to do one again if you're here for it.
Sure.
All right. Other than that, though, thank you for the conversation. This has been great. It's always nice to hear like from people on the other side of the bookstores. Yeah. But all right. What is your beverage of choice, Gretchen? It can be alcoholic or non-alcoholic.
Gosh, lately it's been an Olay.
Yeah.
Keep me going through this bookstore move.
What is your meal of choice?
I usually go for Indian food.
What do you prefer when you go in?
I like to be a little American about it. I like to get a chicken tikka masala and a veggie korma, and then I can kind of mix them. Yeah.
I mean, they're selling them, so it's
right.
American to an extent.
Right.
Okay. Normally we ask like, what's a great read? You just listed about 18.
Yeah.
Okay. What is something you love to watch and you recommend?
Something I love to watch. Wow.
If you watch anything these days.
I don't know. Like I've been enjoying Loki. I haven't watched it actually. I'm going to bring up another book, but my kid and I have been reading the Hilda graphic novels, and they're wonderful.
Oh my gosh!
And I know there is a show, and we haven't so quite got there because I've heard that, but like my kid doesn't like conflict, and so he's a little scared of the trolls. So we're working towards watching it, but yeah.
It's such a good show. It's such
is that okay?
I would say
it's such a good books.
The conflict is also like, it's pretty light. But I mean it's different for a kid too. So
right. I think it's like usually I don't understand you, or we need to like understand one another and we will be able to solve this peacefully kind of a situation. I don't know. I just think that they're just like beautiful, wonderful, great stories, like enough surprise in them to keep me really interested. Like I enjoy them and he enjoys them. And it's just like a great little marriage for me and my my bookshelf for my 5-year-old.
Yeah. Okay. If you remember if you answered this last time, you're welcome to say the same thing or a different person. But if you could have sit down and have a conversation with anyone, real or imagined, alive or dead, who would you pick?
Oh, geez. I should have like a good answer to this, but probably like my problem is that I have too much social anxiety. And so anyone that I really admire, I wouldn't be able to talk to them. Like
you could have like superpowers. In this situation, you're like the most affluent person.
It doesn't matter if I have money. It's just like I'm afraid of like their incredible intelligence. I don't know. It'd probably be Octavia Butler. She was my favorite author. But also I'd be like, tell me everything, like, I don't know, it wouldn't be a great conversation.
Mm-hmm. I meant to say influencing, not affluent.
Oh, sure.
You're rich. Like, what the hell does that have to do with it?
Okay, sorry.
But all right, that's it. So Again, you guys can support Room of One's Own by roomofonesown.com. You can get their subscription boxes. You can donate, get all the books you love. They do online orders and pickups. And check out their social media. I love the Twitter page for Room of One's Own. It's really great. You guys have
That's me, Sean.
Great suggestions of where to put your money and who to support, and some amplifying some great voices. So yeah, thanks again for joining us.
Thanks, Faye.
And our sign off word today will be Viva Books, because I'm not creative.